Welcome to episode 11, where we're going to be talking about the second Charleston. Let's get started. Now that we've covered the first Charleston and the first three moves, first right, across, and first left, and we covered when and why to stop the Charleston, we're going to now move on to the second Charleston, which comprises of the second left, another across, otherwise referred to as a must across. And the reason they refer to it as a must across is because the next across that comes up will be the optional across. So that just helps differentiate it. And finally, the third move of the second Charleston, which is the last right. So let's go ahead and get started with the second Charleston and the second left. When passing the second left, it is advisable to stack them just like this in a little pyramid. I'm going to go ahead and pass for everybody else as well. All right, if you're already thinking about why we stack the Charleston into a pyramid like this, some people say take two tiles and put a hat on it. The reason is because there are two lefts that follow each other, the first left and the second left. This is a very, very nice reminder that you're on the second left. It is also an indication that you are starting the second Charleston and the second left. So this will be the second left that we're performing. Now everybody's past their second left, so we could go ahead and pick the tiles up. Now keep in mind, not everybody waits for all the tiles to be passed before they pick them up. And this is one of the reasons why it is so very important to let everybody know on the first left that you may be thinking about stopping the Charleston. So if, let's say, for example, I had said, hold up, I'm thinking about whether I want to continue the Charleston, then somebody would say to me more than likely, well, are you gonna go? And I, at that point, would either say, I think I'm gonna stop it, or I would say, we can continue. And that's how it's done, simply like that. And this is important to mention. When it comes to stopping the Charleston, there should be no questions asked about why you're stopping it, although you've been taught what the right reasons are to stop it. It is not a requirement to let anybody know why you've made that decision. All right, so now everybody's going to be able to rack their tiles. Now we're going to go ahead and do the second pass of the second Charleston, which is the across move. And again, as I mentioned, also referred to as the must across. So we're going to go ahead and take three tiles and we're going to pass them just like this inside the walls. And everybody is going to do the same. Just like that. All right, now everybody's passed. Everybody can pick up their across. And now we're on the last move of the second Charleston, which is the last right. And the way the last right is done is like this, to the right. No stacking, no capping, no pyramid. Just like this. Now, this is a good one because this pass is also a pass in which you can do your blind pass. So remember, first left and last right. The blind passes are the last move of each the first Charleston and the second Charleston. Eventually you won't have to think about it. First left, last right. So the way that will work is, if I have only one tile to pass, I am going to wait for the tiles to come in from the receiving player, and I am going to take the one tile that I have to pass, take any two of the tiles, add it to mine, and pass them on without looking, because this is a blind pass. The reason it was named a blind pass is because you do this blindly without looking at the tiles. Now, if you are wondering why you don't look at them, well, you don't look at them because these tiles that you've taken from this player were not your tiles to begin with. So if you peek at them, you're going to see the tiles that you're passing on. So you're going to know what the receiving player of your tiles is going to get in their hand. And let's just say you looked at them and you place them down with the tile you looked at in the middle, and the receiving player picked up that middle tile and placed it amongst their tiles. It would be very telling. It would more than likely mean that they are using a 7 dot. All right, so that is, so let's go ahead and back that up. Now I want to show you what would happen if I had no tiles to pass, because you can pass 0, 1, 2, or 3. But if I had no tiles to pass, that would mean that I had Mahjong after the Charleston. And the name for that is having an earthly hand. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And it's an incredible experience if you're ever able to experience it. So if I have Mahjong, I would have no tiles to pass. And since I have 14 tiles in my hand right now, and I was east, indicated by the break in the wall, then I would just simply take their pass and move it on like this. But let me go ahead and put everybody else's first left out. And now I am going to move all of these on. Guess what I get to announce? So if that were to occur and I had Mahjong sitting on my rack, I would display them like this. And I would say very excitedly, Mahjong. And of course at that point you're going to hear oohs and ahs and wows and great job and I can't believe it from everybody sitting around the table, because it is a rarity to have a earthly hand after the Charleston. I want you to notice a few things about the hand I've displayed. The first thing is that I have put the Mahjong in order so that it matches the card. And after you do make Mahjong, it is the proper thing to do so that everybody can verify that you have a correct Mahjong. When you're playing during the game and you make exposures, it is not required to put those exposures in order, because during the game you don't want to give clues to what you're playing. You want to let your opponents figure it out on their own. The other thing is that I have nested my jokers, or the tiles are hugging my jokers, and I have spaces in the exposures, just like you're supposed to do and like you've already been taught in the previous episodes. I do also want to mention that on an even rare occasion, people are dealt in a Mahjong. So after everybody's picked their tiles during the deal, they are sitting with Mahjong. And again, it is extremely rare, but it does happen. And if this does happen, it is called a heavenly hand. So we need to talk about the last pass, which is the optional across. Now I have done a blind pass with all 3 tiles, and now it's time to do the optional across. So the way the optional across works is that the 2 players opposite each other negotiate how many tiles are to be passed, if you want to pass any at all. So it's called optional because you have a choice. So these 2 players here would talk to each other and say, how many tiles do you want? I have 3. And if the other player said, I only have 2, then 2 is what gets passed. So the player with the lower number of tiles to pass is the one that prevails with how many tiles are passed on the optional. In my particular case, when the player across from me says, how many would you like? And I say none, you're probably going to hear a little bit of a remark like, oh, wow, none? They're not going to know that you're going to be displaying a Mahjong, but nonetheless, they're going to know that something good is going on. Now, if I were to say, when they asked me, how many tiles do you have to pass? And if I were to say 1, the smart thing to do, and this is a little bit of strategy for you, a little bit of beginner strategy actually, if I say I have 1 tile to pass, the smart thing for the player across from me to say would be, no, thank you. Now, why would they say no, thank you? Well, they would say no, thank you, because if I only have 1 tile to pass, that is a strong indication that I have something very good going on my rack. And if the player that you're doing the optional across with stopped the Charleston, it is also another good indication that they have one very strong hand. Before we end episode 11, I want to leave you with a story and a mnemonic to help you remember the Charleston moves. Ralph and Larry just loved to do the Charleston with their partners. But one thing about Ralph and Larry is that the first 3 initials of Ralph, R-A-L, actually represent the first 3 moves of the Charleston, the first right, across, and the first left. And it just so happens that brother Larry's first 3 initials, L-A-R, represent the second Charleston, second left, across, and last right. And then, of course, we're left with the optional across pass. This will be an easy way for you to remember the Charleston moves. Think about the story of Ralph and Larry, and you'll have no problems remembering R-A-L and L-A-R. We have now completed episode 11, so we have gone through the first Charleston in episode 9, when and why it is advisable to stop the Charleston in episode 10, and the second Charleston in this episode 11. So I will see you soon in episode 12.